Good evening and welcome to the Town of Sandwich Finance Committee meeting for February 11th, 2025. Tonight's meeting is being aired on Sandwich Community Television and will be available for replay. I'm calling our meeting to order and would ask us to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And just as a point of reference, our Finance Director, Bill Jennings, is with us remotely this evening. And I would ask us all to remember to turn on our microphones and speak clearly into those so those folks at home and here in the auditorium can hear us well. In an effort to provide our residents here in Sandwich with ample opportunity to provide thoughts and input to the Finance Committee on the fiscal year 2026 budget, particularly on the topics we'll be considering at each of our meetings this evening, mostly on the schools, a public forum agenda item has been added to the beginning of our meeting. Is anyone interested in making public comment as we get started? Okay, with none, if you are at home listening, please know that you are welcome to attend the Finance Committee meetings in person. We would like to hear from you. Our next agenda item is approval of our October 22nd, 2024 meeting minutes, which have been updated and sent out in our most recent agenda packet. Can I have a motion to accept them? Motion by Crystal, second by Nancy. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? We don't need a roll call with Bill. He's not a member, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Very good. All right. Correspondence, statements, and announcements is next. The Association of Town Finance Committee regional spring meetings are going to be held on March 27th, 2025, 5 to 7 p.m. There are two of them, one in Hadley at their senior center and the other at the Reading Public Library, Reading being the closest to us. And the topic at the Reading meeting is on creating town meeting efficiency. The Reading session will focus on the Finance Committee's role in town meeting and how to create efficiency. The Hadley session will focus on developing and implementing a successful capital plan. If any of our members of the Finance Committee are interested, I'm happy to forward information, and I'm sure Melissa in Bud's office can assist as well, as she's helped me in the past. And then also, I received an email from the Massachusetts Municipal Association. They've posted a webinar entitled Municipal Finance 101, Budgeting and Best Practice. If anyone is interested in watching, I'd be happy again to send that link to you. Does anyone else have any other announcements, correspondence, or statements? Okay, with none, I will ask Bud to lead us off with updates that you may have for us this evening.
Sure, I'll try to keep this brief. I know last week when we went over our longer presentation, we didn't feel it would be right to send out to distribute the budget binders because we were waiting on some health insurance rate information, which we received last night. So we got those changes made. Melissa and Lisa in our office got the binders ready. So I just thought it would only take me a few seconds, but like this handout, which is also one of the first handouts in your binder, but this just highlights what's different from the many pages that we went through last week, and there's really only 3 pages of difference. I should preface it by saying, if you remember our presentation last week, we were told that the average increase for people in our group was 14.8% on medical insurance and about 6% on dental. So we plugged in what we thought those averages would be. So we got good news last night that our increase was significantly less. It was just about the lowest that they had in the range. So still not great, 9.9% instead of 14.8%. but there were some towns who are probably going to hear they're going up almost 19%. So because of that one change, we were able to reduce the health insurance estimate by $400,000. So if you look on the handout that I gave out, and again, this is in your budget binder as well, last week when I went through, we expressed concern about how some of those employee-related costs are taking up the bulk of our 2.5% increase that's allowed by law, separate from new growth. So that percent went down. Last week it was like 91%. So with the updated numbers, but still 71% of our 2.5% increase is getting swallowed up by health and retirement costs. So this year seems to be an aberration in terms of much higher than it has been in the past for health insurance. Our retirement expenses were pretty reasonable compared to the last 3 years, so that part is good. What it bodes for the future, we'll have to keep an eye on that. So really the substantive 2 pages are the last 2. So on the bottom right, it says page 43, because that's the page in the budget presentation from last week. I know it's small print, but the group health insurance was reduced from 14.6 to 14.2 million. We increased the excess levy reserve from 3.25 million to 3.5 million, and that's all projected. We did think it would be wise to put another 100,000 in our OPEB trust fund where we had a little bit of a balance, and that's really the primary difference between the base budget from last week to this. And then if you flip the page, that optimal outcome budget, which again the sole difference is if we were able to fund the infrastructure for DPW, which was another 560,000. What would that impact be? And you can see, because of that money going the right way in terms of health insurance, if the select board and finance committee decided to support that, so far we're having a decent year, snow and ice. We're spending some, but we're not close to going in deficit. So if we zeroed that out, and then we would still probably have an excess levy reserve of at least 3.1 million. So it looks quite a bit better than what we saw last week, again, because of that one savings in health insurance. As always, as we get better numbers over the ensuing weeks and the next few months, we'll update at every meeting. So I plan to include those 2 slides in almost every meeting, and we'll explain if there's any difference week to week what those are. And that was it.
But are there any other significant dollar items that we're waiting on?
The biggest thing would be the state aid and our assessments, but we won't know that till way after we vote. So I think when the House releases their numbers, which is usually late March, early April, we'll know a little bit better, but it still won't be the final numbers. I don't think what we've seen or heard scares us. I think our assumptions are safe about probably underestimating our revenue and overestimating our expenses from the state. So I think we should be okay. Dr. Mushtek may go through it, but I know our numbers at charter schools are down, so that's good. So that should minimize, or at least hopefully mitigate some of those past increases that we've seen.
Okay. Any questions for Bud? Okay. Dr. Marushek, staff members from the school administration, school committee members that are with us this evening, welcome. We're glad you are joining us this evening. As you know, prior to tonight's meeting, some of the leadership from across town committees and administrations levels met to discuss and also sent ahead last week some questions and a number of thoughts surrounding finance and budget matters. So with that, I'd ask you to please go ahead and begin your presentation of the fiscal 26 Sandwich Public Schools budget.
Super. Well, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm going to minimize Bill. I mean, digitally, not literally. It's my understanding, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present what the school committee has approved as far as our operational budget requests for FY26. As Ed alluded to, I did last week receive that list of questions. I think I need probably another 24 to 48 hours. There's a significant amount of backup that needs to kind of be scanned. You'll all receive the responses to all those questions with links to some of the backup material, particularly in looking at previous years' capital requests, projects, and so on. And then again, I think in 4 weeks, I'm scheduled for a potential follow-up meeting to get a little more granular with respect to some of those questions. So what we have here is the proposed FY26 budget, and something that I've done throughout my 14 years as a superintendent, working with the school committee and then first at the ground level with the finance subcommittee of the school committee. I believe a solid budget really should be goals-based. What are you trying to achieve? And I think the school committee did an outstanding job with the process of developing reasonable goals. And what you have before you is to provide a level service budget, one that keeps the existing programs and services that our 2,149 students need. Secondly, really, I think it comes down to continuous improvement. That we're in the midst now of developing a brand new five-year strategic plan. As a matter of fact, Matt Anderson is one of about 35 members of parents, staff, community members, and students that are kind of developing and crafting this vision. And really the heart of it is, how do we continue to grow and improve as a district? I think in the budget book that I've shared with you, there's a lot of student performance data. I'm very proud of our students' achievement, but there's still room to grow. And that's really all about the continuous improvement. Something that I know that you've been very focused on, and we really have some very, very modest requests with regard to kind of keeping up with the many deferred maintenance needs that we have across the district, but also, again, with an eye towards the future as far as how do we invest in a little bit more long-term, knowing that in all likelihood, there isn't going to be new construction within this community. And how do we get the maximum out of our 3 schools? And then, as always, I think, and I'll be very specific about it, to always find efficiencies in our operation, knowing that we have a delicate balancing act, that we want programmatic improvement, but the school committee, myself, like all of you, are accountable to our taxpayers, and there must be fiscal responsibility. I've talked over the last 2 years about some right-sizing that needed to be done, and I'll show you some specifics, and there's also some data as far as looking at the staffing and what is reasonable. This budget request has 6.0 FTEs fewer in it than the current year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So first and foremost, what do we do when putting together the budget starting in the fall is you obviously take a look at your enrollment. Our October 1st enrollment for this school year is exactly 2,149 students. And then our projected, and really I'm not making up these numbers, it's the way it comes out, is projected to be 2,149. And that's actually probably a conservative estimate. We get enrollment projections each year from an organization known as NESDEC, the New England Staff Development Council, and they're usually pretty accurate. So if you were to look at the trends of what has happened over the last 10 years and realize this doesn't include our pre-K students, you can see the fairly precipitous drop in enrollment that's been discussed. I know on my watch, when I came on board July 1st of 22, we were kind of reeling with a loss of about 130 students from 1 year. If you look at our enrollment over these last 3 school years, it's pretty much stabilized, okay? I think our enrollment, when you took into account pre-K and choice students, we have something like 5 fewer students this school year versus the 23-24 school year. And then moving forward, NESDEC also gives us projections of 10 years out. Obviously, the first 5 have the best reliability, so to speak, for the simple reason that they're actually looking at live birth rates within the community. But the projection is for a relative stability within the Sandwich Public Schools. And a lot of factors go into that, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But, you know, the competitiveness of our programming is a key factor, particularly in looking into that 8th to 9th grade transition. So at current, we have what I would consider to be very, very desirable class sizes. One of many things that makes us a very attractive school district. We are working on the progression. Obviously, you see at Forestdale, where you've got early elementary, that's where you want the smallest class sizes. Then it progresses to you know, in the ballpark of the low 20s at Oak Ridge through those intermediate elementary grades, and then 7 and 8 right now, based upon the teams at the middle high school, are in the high teens numbers. Realize, as I've done over the last 2 years, some of that budget right sizing and that attrition has occurred at the middle high school. So I'm probably going to show you something here that is not exactly shocking, and I actually did this afternoon. And if you ever want to waste some time on the internet, I would invite you to Google School Budgets Massachusetts FY26, okay? And then, you know, the part of Google where it goes to news, click on news, and these are the types of headlines that you see. A lot of districts across the Commonwealth are not in a good place. And we are amongst, I believe, 68% of districts that are considered to be a minimum funding district. We are not reaping any of the benefits of the Student Opportunity Act. So as a result, you see a lot of communities right now in the planning for FY26 looking at major deficits, looking at situations where, like this last one in Duxbury, looking at significant staffing reductions. In some communities' cases, needing an override just to keep level services, to keep things afloat. Again, CPS, I believe that's Cambridge, looking at a $12 million budget deficit. And again, looking at long-term planning just on the South Shore and Pembroke, things are in a really, really tough shape. I'm very pleased, based upon the work of the school committee, based upon the work of my predecessors. I think things have been managed very, very carefully and conservatively. Okay, a lot of school districts across the Commonwealth over this year and last year have hit what is known as the ESSER funding cliff, where they used a lot of that COVID relief money for positions. Here in Sandwich, we have not, with the exception of a relatively small allocation for a summer enrichment program, 2 summer enrichment programs, we have not used it for staffing. So as a result, I think we remain in a very, very good shape in the district. So the proposal that you have before you, that's in the document that you have, is a $40,810,156 proposal that represents a 2.7% increase from this year's operational budget. As I said, as commensurate with the goals, it will maintain level services and really continues our district's forward momentum with regard to really at the early grades, focusing on literacy and numeracy and social emotional learning, and then in the upper grades, innovative practices. As I said before, our staffing is projecting to be commensurate with enrollment. As I said explicitly, there are, in this budget request, 6.0 FTE fewer staff members, professional staff members. I think if you look over the last 3 fiscal years, we're down well over 20, something like 23, 24 FTEs. And again, that is in part right sizing. And again, commensurate with the goals, we've got some planned efficiencies that I'll talk about. And again, I know it's very strongly the will of the school committee to take some of those efficiencies and to reinvest them in capital expenditures to address some of our critical needs. So really the summary of the projected funding of the FY26 budget. We are projecting now, very, very conservatively, level state funding or Chapter 70 funding. That $7,739,000 represents the latest amount that was approved at the special town meeting on January 13th. Therefore, the increase of the $1,073,846 comes from the local contribution, which would represent a 3.36% increase over the current year's contribution. So as always, there are drivers that really kind of drive these numbers. If you look under expenses, you probably see a lot of red, and under salaries, you see it in the black. By far, our greatest asset is our staff. So the biggest driver is obviously going to be our professional and support staff salaries. This past spring, we negotiated with all 4 of our collective bargaining associations. I think it went relatively smooth. Both myself and the school committee did extensive benchmarking to see where we were relative to all of our neighboring districts. And so this, for FY26, will be in the second year of our 3-year agreements. Our teachers will be receiving a 3.25% cost of living adjustment, which is really very consistent with where the market is. And our other associations, specifically our custodians, our admin assistants, and our paraprofessionals, are in the range of about $1.50 to $2 an hour COLA, depending on where they fall in the steps and lanes. As far as special education, which is usually a very, very large driver, we actually have a slight decrease of about $10,000. We have, I believe, 2 fewer students requiring an out-of-district placement for this coming school year. We will be applying an additional $100,000 of what is known as circuit breaker reimbursement, which is funding that comes from the state for those students that are in out-of-district placements. And what I alluded to just a couple minutes ago that we used ESSER funds for. We do a program, kind of a ramp-up program over 4 weeks known as Summer Scholars for students who are struggling. And then we have probably about 65 to 70% of kiddos that are coming in to kindergarten come in for a 3-day program at Forestdale known as Ride the Wave into Kindergarten, which is super successful. So a small investment of about $65,000 to keep those 2 programs up and running. As far as technology, we have made tremendous progress, particularly through COVID and post-COVID, in investments. So overall in our technology line, it's about a hair under a 5% increase, an increase of about 53,559. The reality is the overwhelming majority of our textbook and support materials are now digital. And we've got dramatic reductions in textbooks lines. However, they still get you with regard to licenses and so on, and some of the software pieces. So we now, through K through 8, we've adopted 3 new programs that are kind of our core literacy and numeracy programs, ARC, which is the American Reading Company, and then both Reveal and Ready Math curriculum materials, again, K through 8. We also have some investments with regard to district operations and cybersecurity. One of the larger projects of capital was a complete upgrade of our security camera systems in our schools. There's also some software that kind of goes along with that, but also to help us with cybersecurity, which became an enormous concern. For those of you that have kids in our school, or maybe you saw this in the news in January, our student information system, PowerSchool, had a national data breach. They're pretty much rectifying it. Luckily, we do not collect some of the most important personal identification information like social security numbers. However, it's still a little disconcerting that something like that occurred. Also in technology, we have a 4-year cycle of refresh for our educator laptops. So there will be a refresh for our middle high school, and then also a refresh of all of our touch boards or smart boards. Realize all of our classrooms across the district have that. Buildings and grounds, I believe last year I came to you with an additional line item in the building and grounds is for $200,000 to replace the carpeting at both Oak Ridge and Forestdale, much of which has been the original 1990-91 carpeting. So we're looking at a 3-year investment. Last year, or this current fiscal year, was year 1. This would represent year 2. Pretty much all the other lines are level service funded. We do have, on the positive side, a decrease of about $75,000 for heating costs from the move from the Wing School to our 270 Quaker Meeting House. Needless to say, the Wing School probably wasn't that energy efficient, so it's probably not a surprise that we're saving that. Transportation is also a large driver. We are finalizing the bid process. We got good news just last week. We had a total of 3 bidders for the busing contract based upon what our facilitator consultant is recommending to us. We have an increase in that line for regular transportation of a 7% increase. In our teaching and learning line, really which kind of speaks to curriculum development, professional development, it is for the most part level funded, and there really is one driver that's kind of driving that increase. And one of the pieces that was negotiated with the teachers was putting a cap on graduate course reimbursements. Realized for many, many years in the budget, what would be budgeted in that line would be $50,000. My first year as superintendent, we blew a hole right through it, and something like $120,000 was paid out. So that's problematic. So what was negotiated was having a hard cap of $80,000, and those reimbursements are on a first come, first served basis. Athletics is an increase a hair under 7%, largely through kind of an increase in transportation, but increases for contest management, referee fees and so on, but also there's a piece in there around ice time that continues to be a driver under materials and supplies. And then district-wide expenses, you actually see a reduction there through the good work of Michelle Austin, our business manager, and Bryce Harper, our technology director. We actually have a savings of about $40,000 in renegotiating our copier contract and also having lesser copiers across the district. And I didn't include it there, but also a reduction of about $5,000 in printer costs, paper costs rather. So there is an upside to the whole digital piece. So if you look in your budget booklet, what I have right here is summarized on page 4. Again, the breakdown by all of our cost centers. As far as our salaries, our salary increase is a hair under 1.2 million, which comes out to be 3.99%. And then our expenses is actually a decrease of almost 1.1% for the overall increase in the operational budget of $1,073,846, which again translates to a 2.70% increase overall. So I did want to say, I can give, I intend on giving you a kind of a deeper dive into the enrollment piece to show what other options our families are choosing. But you can see over the last 3 to 4 school years, kind of a stabilization of enrollment. I want to just, this probably won't be perfect, but I want to just do an overlay of what's happened with regard to staffing. Again, different y-axis as far as our number of FTEs, but you can see if you look at the darker line, through COVID, we actually had a decrease in our student population, and at the same time, we had an increase in FTEs. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, and if you think back to where we were during those delightful school years of 1920 and 2021, and all the different permutations around social distancing and having to do hybrid schedules and having only X number of kids in a class at a time and so on,
So it's understandable that the staffing went up, at least on a temporary basis. But I think it's important to see since 22, 23, seeing a gradual decline, okay? What I refer to as right-sizing. There are places where we've found deficiencies with regard to staffing. I think I'm very, very fortunate. As of today, I think we've received 11 retirements. So that helps, obviously, with the attrition piece. It also helps with the replacement costs, because usually somebody who's retiring is top step masters plus, and so on. So there's savings in that piece. But I thought that was important to share with you. So I think it really comes down to, again, this is a budget that's being presented to you that keeps level services for our students, pre-K through 12, but also in taking a look at what are current strategic objectives. What exactly are we trying to achieve in the big picture? One, to support each of our students so that they can achieve what is known as the Portrait of a Graduate, which are 6 essential competencies, things like collaboration, like problem solving, like critical thinking, and so on, upon graduation from Sandwich High School. Again, I think we are super fortunate with regard to the class sizes that we offer our students. That enables us to meet kids where they are and to meet individual needs. And I think, by and large, our staff is very successful in doing that. I think connecting with our families and communicating feedback, news about what's happening in our schools, but what's happening with their individual children is also extremely important. And again, we talk a lot about safety. We talk about making sure that our schools are appropriately fortified, that we do all of the necessary drill planning and so on, but there's also the emotional piece to that, the emotional safety and the outstanding work that goes on each and every day with regard to social emotional learning. And then last but not least, to make sure that we're managing resources, particularly with regard to facilities and technology, smartly, strategically, conservatively. So again, first and foremost, we're meeting the academic and social emotional needs of our kids. So I say that, and I think the school committee, they're very well versed in what our district goals are. But I think I created this slide at the end of the presentation, and I think about some of the recent successes that we've had as a district. I'm fortunate enough that every Friday, the second Friday of every month, I meet with about 18 kiddos at the high school. I bring them in donuts and a box of Joe, and we kind of talk about their experience. And I think about the successes that we have academically. I think about the successes that we have athletically, the work that goes on, you could see in the lower right-hand corner, Sandwich Soul, and what we do with regard to both the visual and the performing arts. I think about the ongoing work you could see in the upper right-hand corner through Project 351. We're doing really kind of a student-run program called the Playbook Initiative to kind of really promote, particularly at the younger grades, starting at Oak Ridge, pro-social behaviors, that kind of speaking out against bullying and kind of being an upstander and so on. So I think about all those experiences and the richness that we offer each and every single day. And I do think that we're on a really, really solid path right now, that there's a lot of forward momentum. And I think about what we've started this school year at the high school, something known as Innovation Career Pathways, where students take a prescribed number of very rigorous courses, and then their senior year, they have a work-based internship in that area. We started with the field of computer science this year. We're moving to biomedical science next year, along with business, specifically small business ownership. I would invite you to take a look at some of the data as far as how our students stack up, particularly versus Cape and the Islands, when you look at traditional metrics, things like MCAS, SATs, APs, and so on. So I think student growth and achievement is really at an all-time high. But again, part of the vision, again, is around ensuring that our kids are safe, they have a strong sense of belonging. A source of pride that we'll be talking about at tomorrow night's school committee meeting. In October, our high school underwent its accreditation visit through the New England Associations of Schools and Colleges. It passed an additional 10 years of accreditation with flying colors. As a matter of fact, the final report has 27 accommodations and 3 recommendations. I'll take that ratio any day of the week. Again, I think our biggest challenge, it's a challenge for us as a school district, but for us as a town, for you as a FinCom, is ensuring that we keep that success up. And a good chunk of it is our facilities and infrastructure. There are places where we have to make continued investment. Yes, the $13 million bond in the spring of '22 was enormously helpful, but I could double, triple, quadruple that amount with the number of things that are out there. So I do have to admit, I did have to kind of force a picture of those 3 cute girls at Oak Ridge during the solar eclipse last April, but I do think it's apropos because I do think our future is bright. So I know that's a lot in a relatively short period of time, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Jim.
First off, I want to thank you for putting all that together. The numbers that really jumped out at me were the enrollment numbers. I think specifically the 8th grade to 9th grade transition this year. 14 years ago, as a school committee, we asked the town to make a pretty big sacrifice, and we gave up our neighborhood public schools to have a sandwich neighborhood, in which we all know pre-K2 was Forestdale, 3K6, then on to middle high school and high school. And one of those ideas being by the time you went to 8th grade, 7th grade, you were familiar with your classmates through school, through activities, scouting, what have you, and ideally, that would stem the flow. And to see this class, the class of 2028, is the first class to come into our schools through that system, and to see the number at under 1%, only 0.34%, I think that's a tremendous, accommodation to you folks. I think it's a tremendous thank you to the town, to those students and teachers that made the sacrifice when we did give up those neighborhood schools. And that's, that's the thing we've heard all along, stem the flow, stem the flow. And it looks as though that the flow is starting to stem, so it'd be a shame if we did, take the foot off the gas now. I think now is the time to continue the investment in the schools. We, as I said, we asked the town to sacrifice, they sacrificed, and you paid off with the results, and I think we should continue, pressing forward. So thank you again for the fine work.
And if I could add, our district had a very, very challenging trend, and I'll be sure I've got a whole bunch of charts and data tables to share with all of you, where I want to say for a period of 7-8 years, the attrition rate for from 8 to 9 was in the ballpark of about 34 to 35%. The last 2 years, we've lost 28%. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not doing cartwheels about that. That's not a good thing. And realize the biggest puller of our students is Upper Cape Tech. It's not even close. And to their credit, I think Upper Cape Tech has some excellent programming. But realize the work that we're trying to do with these innovation career pathways is to target, particularly here on the Cape, what are the skills, what are the real life work experiences that our kids need to be post-secondary career ready, okay? It's not going to be perfect, but I think it's the best, one of the best tools that we're employing right now to keep more of our kids. Because that is, as Jim just pointed out, that is huge. That represents the future viability of the school district, but also, in my humble opinion, this community. Yeah.
Any other questions? Nancy?
Hi, and thank you again for the details. I had a couple of questions that I was hoping would be answered, and one is about the status of that 15 million and any additional monies, maintenance monies that have been given, because I thought we were supposed to get some of that.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I have all of the questions here. I have a bunch of stuff to scan, which are kind of backup documents. To give you a real quick and dirty, all of the projects are completed of the 15 million, with the exception of the HVAC projects for both Oak Ridge and Forestdale, and the boiler projects for both of those schools. I think what we're going to do is we are going to proceed with the HVAC project for Oak Ridge. And part of the discussion was probably a greater need there, bigger kids, some of which pushing the boundaries of puberty, if you know what I mean. So we're going to do that, and we're going to have the boiler project at Forestdale. And that will exhaust the 15 million.
So then another question that I thought we were going to see broken out is a few years ago, the town gave the schools something like $220,000 or $50,000 for the care and custody of the wing school, and that the wing was a separate line in past budgets, and I don't see where that money has gone, because the intent, I think, was that it would be returned to the town, but clearly there's a need to now to maintain another building, the admin building now. So where, what happened to that money, and are you using it all? Because that, I don't believe that was the intent.
I think if you look, I believe if you look on page 23 of the document, where you see central administration building maintenance expenses, that is inclusive of what used to be the operational, the expenses for the wing school. And if you want years prior to FY24, I'm more than happy to get those off to you.
So I think the original intent was that a lump sum was put into the school budget, and now it's become part of the base. And I don't think that was the intent. So, I mean, like I said, clearly you need something to maintain the new admin building.
And I think what you see for FY26 represents that now 100%. Realize central office moved January 15th of 2024, so the FY25 budget kind of represents kind of a 50-50 split of wing expenses and
It's just that there should be a significant decrease from the maintenance of the wing school, as large it is and as it is and inefficient was. So what happened to the rest of that money? Do you know what I'm asking?
yeah, but realize what our expenses were just for the wing where the central office was. So a lot of those expenses for Waypoint Academy, the school, the small alternative school that was operated by the Cape Cod Collaborative, they were responsible for those expenses. But I'm more than happy if you'd like to see the prior years
Yeah,
of those expenses.
it's not matching up. The ledgers aren't matching up. My other question was, if we're moving back to the Cape and Islands Athletic Conference, shouldn't there be a decrease in transportation?
I think our athletic director, Sean Donovan, is kind of doing some of his own right sizing as well. I think the budget he inherited was not terribly accurate from his predecessor, and it's probably a wash for the simple reason that now back in the Cape and the Islands, you have to compensate for the Nantucket and Vineyard trips as well. Whereas it's kind of been, during these 2 years in the South Shore League, it's been a little more hit or miss with those.
Thank
Bob, you had a question. I saw. You want to go? Jackie, you want to go? Go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you for that really strong presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, just I have a couple, like one minor thing. Why is transportation costs going up by the 7%, where you see, some of the fuel prices stabilizing, number of students stabilizing? What's driving that? I think you said there's also probably a downstream impact on some of the athletic numbers, which is
Sure.
also represents an increase. Why are we seeing that?
I think it's one thing and one thing only: labor. You cannot find drivers, and I 3 or 4 times a week I run past the Cape Cod Collaborative offices on Bumps River Road in Osterville, and they have a big sign. So they have their school sign, and then they have a sign that says, "Hiring drivers now, $2,000 sign-on bonus." And I know the situation that we have with our current carrier, Lucini Transportation. Myself and Michelle, we connect with Bill Lucini a couple times a year. I think he's got that same challenge. So I think it's labor costs, kind of keeping things up, but also things like signing bonuses and so on.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that.
And realize, too, they also have overhead. We're kind of a little bit in the weeds of a bidding situation that we're in now and kind of getting resolution to that. And, you put stipulations because, first and foremost, you care about safety. So you put in stipulations around, you've got to have a bus that is at least 7 years or younger. that, or newer rather, has X number of miles and so on. So they have overhead costs as well.
Yeah, and you feel like you've got transparency into what's driving their costs to be.
We do, and I've got to be 100% honest with you. I am thrilled beyond belief that we actually got 3 bidders. Kind of a secret out loud, and maybe Nancy or Jim during your tenures on the school committee, kind of a secret out loud in the Commonwealth is kind of collusion that happens with regard to transportation providers. And the overwhelming majority of districts, when they go out to bid, they get, looky here, 1 bidder, and it's your existing provider, because it's kind of this unspoken thing that you don't tread on somebody else's territory. So I think we're fortunate. We worked with a consultant who has a lot of experience, and I'm really pleased that we got 3 bids.
Interesting. Great. The second question was really regarding the Student Pathways program, and I think your presentation really made a lot of sense in terms of some of the declining enrollments in that critical year, and the fact that they're going to tech, and we know taxpayers really want to see those student outcomes, and in the later years they want to see career options, and that's perhaps what's driving folks to tech. So the Pathways does seem like where folks are getting the opportunity to work in internship mode. That is a strong sort of counter to that. Do we see an FY26 increase in investment there, or flat?
You do, not so much financially, but part of it is at tomorrow night's school committee meeting, we're going to be discussing changes in the program of studies. So it's really kind of taking a position from one department and shifting it into another department to ensure that the students in biomedical pathways now have, we have an additional teacher teaching biology and a program called Project Lead the Way, the core biomedical science courses. So it's kind of, part of that right sizing is some attrition, but some of it is also redeployment.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would be interesting to look at for, future budgets. Thank you.
Yep.
Bob? Okay, thanks. Nice presentation, thank you. Have to admit, I took a random walk through your document, so the questions that I have are random. You mentioned at the end of your presentation that you'd received notice of 11 retirements. And you mentioned that the good news there was they tend to be at the max.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming with 11 retirements at the max, with the steps and the levels and the zones, your projected salary increase for professional and support staff of 3.99 is going to be less than 3.99. Is that a fair assumption?
No, it's not. Realize that represents at least 10 of the 11 positions, because we got early notice. It also presupposes replacement of some of those positions, but realize the cost of living adjustment is 3.25%, but that 3.99% also represents steps and lanes. So for teachers who aren't at the top step, year 12 or year 13, they also get a step increase. For teachers who earn their master's degree or credits beyond that, they're also a lane increase. So that 3.99 is inclusive of all of those increases.
And reflects all 11 retirements?
10 of the 11.
10 of the 11. So all of those are official, and those 10 can't back out, can't change their mind?
I believe contractually they cannot.
Okay. Thanks. So you highlighted, and I'm assuming this is separate from the 11 FTE, you highlighted the right sizing on your staffing reductions. And so I was looking at that on page 9. And so I see you've added instructional support staff, but the most significant decline is paraprofessionals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me and this committee a sense, I'm assuming administrators and instructional staff are your biggest spends in terms of average compensation.
Correct.
So, and then you've added instructional support staff, and we're decreasing paraprofessionals. In terms of thinking about the saves per position, are paraprofessionals highly compensated, the least highly compensated? Can you give me a sense of?
They're not highly compensated. They make, depending on where they are on the steps scale, a fraction of what our teachers make.
Okay. That's helpful to me. Thank you. I just want to talk about some of the revenue projections or budget projections you've got in here for revenues. And let me just see if I can find some of these. Because it struck me that, for example, page 5, where you talk about additional funding and your 4-year grant awards.
Mm-hmm.
There's a massive fallout for fiscal '26. Can you talk about whether that's conservative budgeting or a knowing that these revenues are going to be gutted? Can you just comment as
Sure.
to how the number got so different?
I think, unfortunately, Bob, my answer right now is going to be D, all of the above. So it is very conservative budgeting, in the sense that you see one of the biggest pieces is that CPPI grant. This year, that is actually a competitive grant that is known as the Community Partnership, that ultimately the goal is universal pre-K. So over the last 3 fiscal years, you can see $750,000. It was bumped up to $1 million. So what that does is that helps us partner not only with our own in-house preschool, but also preschools within the community. So like Joyful Noise right around the corner and so on. So that helps offset things like teachers, teacher assistants, but also something known as early identification. So if you have like a 3 or 4-year-old that's struggling with speech and so on. Massachusetts has been wonderful, and we've had appropriate staff to have these types of programs. I think right now, and it was one of the questions that came from this committee, over concerns of, the Department of Education conceivably being dismantled. What's going to happen to these grant programs?
Understood. So help me just from a budget perspective. Fiscal '24, 2.2 million. Fiscal '25, 2 million. Fiscal '26, 8 million, roughly.
800,000.
800,000. Are you cutting things, or does the shortfall you've assumed in the grants get picked up somewhere else in your budget?
No, I think unfortunately, and particularly with that loss of $1 million, those programs, seeing that they're strictly grant funded, they're outside of the operational budget, they would cease to exist.
Okay. Good answer, not a good answer.
No, it's not a
You know what
good
I mean?
scenario, but
Okay,
that's
right.
completely part and parcel.
It makes sense, thanks. Likewise, the revolving accounts on page 6, there's another, not as significant, but there's another assumed shortfall, conservative budgeting. Is that,
Yes, very conservative budgeting and estimation. You know, I'm glancing at one line that jumps out at me is the school lunch going from 474 to 400,000. It's probably conservative budgeting. You know,
so
with
conservative
universal free
budgeting,
lunch.
if you don't have the money, it doesn't get spent, not conservative
Correct.
budgeting. I tucked it somewhere else.
Correct.
Great. So then, I just wanted to pick up on the bus question. And this is the worst kind of observation I'm going to make because
I know where you're going.
it's just me.
No, it's not
I
you.
walk my dog twice a day,
Yep.
and the buses are always empty. So has the school committee and has your team studied usage, and is the service worthwhile? You know, if no one's riding the bus, why run the bus? Is someone in the school committee or in your offices having that conversation and taking a hard look at transportation?
Great question. So this has come up at the school committee level several times, and particularly during the month of January, during our budget deliberations. We're intending on putting out a survey to our families to kind of get a comprehensive look. Here's the conundrum, plain and simple. We offer this service to families. It is a terrific service, and I totally knew where you were going because there's times that I see buses 1/3 to 1/2 filled with kiddos at all 3 schools. Part of the conundrum is, quite frankly, if you also have the opportunity to be at Oak Ridge or at Forestdale or at the middle high school during drop-off and pickup and see the joy that is the traffic that develops, I think the piece that we struggle with is there's part one, do you need the bus? But part two, realize we're one of very, very few communities across the Commonwealth that do not charge for buses. We can charge. As a matter of fact, a lifetime ago, I was the principal of Mansfield High School down 495. And back in the late 2000s, the aughts, I guess, we were charging $130, $140 a year for ridership. We don't necessarily want to do it. I mean, I'm sure you guys might get a tiny bit of feedback about taxes and fees within the community. So it's not our desire to do that, but we are going to try to look for efficiencies to run fewer buses.
Okay, terrific. That's helpful. I'm assuming, Mr. Chair, that we can pester the team with more questions later on as we go through the budget hearing process.
Yes, we have another meeting a month out, as Dr. Marashek said, where we'll be able to follow up on anything
Terrific.
from tonight. Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Jim, I know you had something else.
Yes, I was wondering if you could explain the admin costs being down for the Oak Ridge school salaries. I know we're always looking to have admin costs down. It looks as though it's down 2.61% for the admin.
Yeah, for admin or for?
I think on page 16 of the report, I think it's just for the admin differential is.
Yeah, because we had a a long-term assistant principal, Brandy Clifford, retired, and she was replaced by Dr. Mary Kate Stevens, who's brand new first step.
Okay. And when you go over to the high school, the middle high school, regarding department heads, again, a big cut. Could you explain what was happening with the department heads?
I think it's two things. There is kind of a changeover in department chairs. I'd say approximately half changeover. So there's some differences with stipends. And there's one department head position that had been in place for quite some time that had been eliminated.
And the final one, under professional development, looks as though in-state travel conference down 90%, $10,000.
Where is that, Jim?
Page 19, Sandwich, middle high school, expenses. And, just curious, we're confident our professional development will still be?
Extremely confident, and the overwhelming majority of that is realized Jeannie Nelson as principal has in her contract the ability to go to the national NASSP conference. I think this coming year it is in Nashville. She's got absolutely no desire to go there.
Thank you.
My feeling exactly, Nancy.
Well, no, that's always good. There's always things we've heard over the years, admin, professional development. So the fact that those can go down and not have quality sacrifice, that's always.
Yeah. And I think the bottom line is a lot of our well-established structures, and again, structures that I'm sure you, Jim, and Nancy had a hand on during your tenure on the school committee, particularly the Wednesday piece. The Wednesday early release is huge as far as the work and the collaboration that gets done within our district.
That's great to hear.
Bob?
Sorry, just thought of one more, and maybe I'm misremembering from years gone by, but school choice, students coming into the district, the school budget receives those monies. For students who elect to go somewhere else, is that still coming out the municipal side of the budget? Okay.
It's a $5,000 exchange either way.
Do we know how many Sandwich students are going and that we're paying for?
It's approximately a 2-to-1 ratio. So for this current year, and I can add that.
Two coming in?
Yeah,
One
this
going out?
year we've got approximately, I want to say about 135 kiddos coming in, and we've got about 65 or so choicing out.
And you get the income and he gets the outgo? Okay.
Well, in the big picture, isn't it all really kind of the
Well, in
same?
the big picture, it's the same pair of pants, different pockets, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Nice analogy.
Crystal?
Hi, Joe.
Hi,
So
how are you,
I
Crystal?
echo everybody. It was a fabulous presentation. I enjoyed it. And then I just wanted to just kind of clarify one little thing on the maintenance portion. You said the carpets. You said it was 200,000. It was 3 years. Now, is that clarification? Is that they last about 3 years? Is that
Oh
what
no,
you were
it's
saying?
a 3-year financial commitment for a total of $600,000 to replace those carpets with a polyvinyl flooring tile.
Okay. Yeah, because that was kind of my thought.
If you
know,
want
something
me
that
to,
wasn't
and
carpet.
I think it worked well last year when I discussed capital, I'd love to do the show and tell. Okay, slides to show, okay, this is what the carpeting looks like
Right.
before. This is what, the tile flooring in Arthur Guerra's classroom looks like now.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah, and thinking about that, because the pipe burst that we had a couple years ago, that was,
Forestdale, yeah.
I'm sure that was
Well, we-
kind of looked at with a lot of that repair. And
Yeah, and realize that was insurance money that only was used for some of those affected classrooms.
Right, but thinking about, okay, all of that had to be used to not, kind of cut down on just those little things. But one other thing, I just wanted to add, just a comment, the ARC bookshelf and iReady, that's a fabulous program. I've seen, even my daughter, it's like her growth with it.
Agreed.
Other parents that I've talked to, that's tremendous.
Agreed.
So that should definitely,
Oh, absolutely.
stay or even be improved more in the future.
And again, when I touched upon some of the increases in the technology lines, a lot of that is, the digital licenses and so on, the teacher materials that are used on the smart boards and so on.
Yeah. Yep, so thank you.
Nancy?
Yeah, just one, what fees do the kids pay? I remember athletics and extracurricular activities. Are there any others?
They've been stable for a real long time, okay? Our athletic user fee is, I believe it's $150 per sport. I am told that's, we're probably going back to the 90s that we've had that. And then we have a inclusive club fee of $80, and that gives you unlimited clubs at the middle high school. We're rethinking that structure, more of a concern at Oak Ridge. We kind of did a junior version of that of $40. Not to be cynical or anything, but maybe some of our parents figured out, okay, $40 unlimited club fee. Oh, by the way, daycare. You might have seen an article that Candy Thompson did about the Cursive Club. So, I'm thinking to myself, what kid wants to be in the Cursive Club? The Cursive Club has 35 kids, all right? So, Trish Hill and I have had conversations of okay, you're kind of a victim of your own success. It's awesome that you've got kids and faculty members totally excited to do cool things. We've got a sewing club and so on after school, but we're probably going to have to rethink some of those fee structures.
I remember how stable the fees have been for athletics.
Yeah.
The costs have been going up. And I don't think it was ever meant to be even, with the cost for athletics, but it's got to only be a drop in the bucket now with the costs going
For a kid who plays a club sport? Yeah, I mean, my niece plays club lacrosse, and my brother-in-law is probably easily dropping $3,000 to $4,000 a season. I mean, it's,
And then you get into, we want to include as many kids as want to do these programs. So
again, to go back to my slide about our students' experience, something that I think is a tremendous source of pride for our community. I mean, just think about this number. 61% of our kiddos at the middle high school play at least one sport. 61%. And then if you roll the other extra and co-curricular activities, KTC, Sandwich Soul, and so on, Chicas for Change, that number skyrockets. So I think holding our kids and getting that sense of belonging is extremely important.
Jim?
And there's an old expression, keep your kids in sports, keep them out of the courts.
Yeah.
And it's true. You give them enough extracurricular activities, keep them occupied.
Absolutely.
So, well
Go
done.
ahead, Crystal.
So just going on the clubs, because I know a lot about it. My daughter did a few of them, Cursive Club being one of them.
Okay.
But for me as a parent, I would even pay more than that.
Yeah.
Because, for her learning cursive anyways, she wanted to learn it. And I know seeing just, me daily seeing parents bringing their kids into the bank to cash their first paycheck. They turn it over, they say you have to sign it, and boom, blank stares,
Yeah.
eyes filling up with tears. What's that?
Yeah.
And the parents look like so ashamed and shocked, and the kid is barely printing their name.
Yeah.
You know, so different programs like that, are a club that, I mean, going into classrooms, it's a lost art, it should be, but she did video game club and cursive club. She hated video game club and
Okay.
loved cursive club. So it was, those, but I would definitely, as a parent, pay more for that.
Sure, and realize if we have families that qualify for free or reduced lunch, those fees are waived
Right.
anyway. So I think you'll see over the next month or two, the school committee will really give a considerable amount of thought to, kind of a fair structure. We want to maximize our participation, but we also don't want to be in the red either.
Right. And then just one thing, as we were talking about this, that popped in my mind, extended day. So does those fees go to the staff that run them as, towards their salary? for
Yeah,
being there, or does
that's
that-
considered to be a revolving account, and we use that for the staff and for the students that,
Okay.
work it.
Okay.
I have a question on maintenance. So in our budget presentation, straight up, it talks about a decrease of 144,000, but that's being supplemented or replaced by the state funding that was approved at special town meeting.
Yeah, really what that
correct?
represented
So it's
is
kind of a
that
swap.
165,000 additional of Chapter 70 is in the FY '25 number.
So how does that then impact subsequent years where that 165 may not be there? Was that not an opportunity to say that there
It's
was
a one-time expense, and you'll get, I know that was one of the questions that was put in writing to me. We've had a situation, and again, we have a very robust district safety team that has looked at a lot of solutions. Realize the locks that exist at Oak Ridge and Forestdale are in the ballpark of about 15 years old. They only lock from the outside. So if you think about things, various safety drills, lockdowns, and so on, it's less than optimum. You also have a situation where you've got adjoining wings, adjoining classrooms. You don't have a secure situation there, okay? We looked at a bunch of different solutions over the last year to year and a half. There were some objections raised by some individuals on our disability commission. Our fire chief, JJ, about 10 to 12 years ago brought forward these magnetic strips that have kind of been used as a solution. Complaints were brought forward to the state fire marshal, and JJ had to work positively with us, but also with the state fire marshal. So we've gone with the solution to have kind of state-of-the-art locks that lock from both the inside and the outside for all of our elementary classrooms. So actually installation at Forestdale will commence, when do we start February vacation? Next week, right? Wow, 3 more days, yes. That is kind of like the one-time expense, Ed, that 165 is going toward.
But prior to that, you were planning to do that and had it in the budget, even if the 165 wasn't?
For the capital, realize to do both schools is approximately double that. It's
Okay.
about 335, 340,000.
Okay, thank you. There's a note in the narrative under technology, page 26, I think it is. It says the initiative, which I believe is referencing the upgrade of technology at the middle high school. It was slated for the previous fiscal year, but delayed. So what happened to the money that was what was originally budgeted for, but then not used for that project? How did that money get used?
So realize what we frequently do, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle. We use a portion of the choice funds, the school choice funds, to pay for devices. So, I can definitely get back to you. I would say probably there could have been a delay in the choice funds, but also we used some of those choice funds towards some of the upgrades in the auditorium. You obviously probably have noticed enhanced lighting in the auditorium, replacement of the curtain, the main stage curtain, and so on. So I think probably those funds were allocated, but I can get more granular.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Marashek? And as Bob Gurin mentioned, we'll have an opportunity in a few weeks to follow up as
probably
we
about
let this
48
settles
hours.
in and the responses that we get in the next few days from the questions. So thank you. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
We look forward to hearing from you as we continue our budget discussions on March 11th. That's the date that you'll be back with us to present the capital budget and available for further questions. So onward with our agenda to old business. There was a discussion last week about going forward with inviting Superintendent Forget from the Upper Cape Tech School to join us. Bill and I and Crystal discussed that briefly after last week's meeting about the possibility of having him come making a shorter presentation. Bill's checked on his schedule, and he could be available to join us on Tuesday, March 11th, which is when Sandwich Public Schools will be back with us. Is everyone okay with an abbreviated presentation that evening? I see nods, so we will plan to do that. And Bill and I will make sure that happens. So thank you. Any other old business not reasonably anticipated? Hearing none there. How about any new business not anticipated by myself? None on that note. All right. And to wrap us up for the evening, any comments from the public that are with us? Seeing none. Thank you. And just again, thank you again, Dr. Marashek and the school department team for their efforts and their great presentation tonight as we continue to work our budget planning. The next Finance Committee meeting is planned in 2 weeks on Tuesday, February 25th at 6 p.m. And then we'll be joined by the leaders of the DPW, the police department, and the fire department for their fiscal 26 budget discussions. In addition, we'll receive an update on and discuss the DPW fire station shared site. So with that, anybody else have any closing remarks? Nancy?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could get their budgets ahead of time.
Yeah, they're all in the binder.
In the binder.
So I think it's tab 4. You can find
Okay,
them
what's
in
there is what
Yep.
we're going to talk, okay.
Detail.
Yep. Sometimes they have a PowerPoint deck. If that's available a day or so
get it,
be
yeah.
ahead, if you could send that, that might be helpful too. Thanks, bud. Anything else? If not, could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Motion by Crystal, second by Jackie. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a great evening. Thank you all.